sarvabhuteshu marupena sanstitaha namastasyai 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 namo namaha ya devi sarvabhuteshu shaktirupena sanstitaha namastasyai 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 namo namaha ya devi sarvabhuteshu buddhirupena sanstitaha namastasyai 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 namo namaha ya devi sarvabhuteshu lakshmi rupena sanstitaha namastasyai 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 namo namaha. So we are in the 4th chapter, and Hemaleka is talking with her husband Hemachuda, and she's related a story about the comely prince who has a beautiful form, and he's rather full of himself, and he has a lovely wife, and he thinks she is more beautiful than anything. But she goes for the bad boys. So she devises a ruse wherein she asks the servant, who's not very good looking, to dress up in her clothes and go into the prince's chamber, get him drunk, ply him with liquor. Then the servant hops into bed, and she and the prince do the mufti-pufti. And the prince goes on with this thinking, oh, I'm so lucky I have such a wonderful wife, and she's so responsive, and she is so affectionate and caring in bed. Meanwhile, the queen is hooking up with a bad boy servant. They're over in his particular chambers under the stairs. They're doing the mufti-pufti. One night, of course, the servant doesn't give the king enough liquor. So he hops into bed and does the mufti-pufti. And after he's finished, he realizes it isn't his wife. So he grabs her by the hair and pulls out his sword and says, tell me the truth or I'm going to cut your head off. So the servant is very frightened. So she takes him to where the queen is with the servant. He is shocked. I think this is where we left off 2 weeks ago before the holiday. So we have our scriptural sex scandal. Who's chanting this evening?
I can chant.
Thank you. So what verse are we on?
53, 54.
All right. Thank you.
Should I begin?
Begin.
Tingmam man aryam atyantam mudha madvimohitam dhigye srishva bhri sanprita dhiktascham purushadhaman na kaminya kasyachit survrikshasyeva sharikaha. Be upon me, who am unworthy, extremely foolish, and deluded by intoxication. Fie upon those, the meanest of men, who are greatly delighted in women. Beautiful women cannot belong to anyone as sarika birds to a tree. Note, birds fly away to such trees where desired fruits are available.
So I think in America we pronounce the word phi. And it means phooey, to heck with it. So he says, fie on me who am addicted to drink, and then fie on women who are unfaithful and they just fly from one fella to another. And of course, there's a lot of humor in this because the fact of human experience is it's usually the guy who's out cheating, not the gal. And we have far more stories of unfaithful husbands than we do unfaithful wives. But as people are wont to do, he projects. But the point here is he sees the foolishness. And the point that Kshatriya wants to communicate to us, in his delusion, he mistook the servant for his wife. And he got all sorts of enjoyment from her, thinking it was his wife. This is just a metaphor for what you and I do. We go out and do the mufti pufti with all the objects of the senses, thinking that's where happiness is. When the real place for happiness is the mind abiding in the self. So here is just a humorous, racy tale that illustrates the point of this delusion, where we think something is other than it is. This idea of adhyas, superimposition. Note also for the prince, the desirable woman was in his mind, not in the bed. All right, next verse.
Kim aham mam pravakshyami mugdham mahishapotavaat janantam enam pranebhya preshtham suchirakalatah. What shall I say of me, stupid like the young of a buffalo, regarding this woman for a very long time as the most beloved, even more than my life?
So he thinks he's stupid because he superimposed all this fidelity on her and was convinced that she was enjoying his body, when in fact she was absolutely deluding him. Next one.
Na striya kasya chittava syuveshya iva vitasya hi yasrishu vishrambhana sa eva vanagardabha. Also, women cannot belong to anybody indeed, as a harlot cannot belong to a sensual person. He who has a mind trusting in women is only a wild ass.
And again, oftentimes it's exactly the other way around, but this is his conclusion. If you go to a brothel and you pay for the services of a sex worker, it is her job to make you feel like you're the most important fellow in the world. There are also stories about the young man who visits the brothel for the first time and falls in love with the sex worker, thinking she was as devoted to him as he to her, not realizing that after he's out the door, the next customer comes in and she feigns the same affection for the next one. So the idea here is it's a wonderful comparison to the kind of delusion we superimpose upon the world. Next verse.
या स्थिति शारदा भ्रस्य क्षणिका यान्वस्थिता ततोपि पेलवाश्रीणां स्थितिरत्यन्त चलचला. Weaker than the state of the autumnal cloud, which is momentary and unsteady, is the state of women, which is extremely fickle.
So here, his idea is that you see a cloud in the sky and it looks like a horse, or it may look like a castle, and then the wind comes and it's blown into another shape. So is the affection that he says women have. I think he's being a little bit harsh. I think it's just kind of the state of young people in general. You know, that hot passion that oftentimes youngsters have, and in time it wears off, and you see, oh my gosh, there's a human being, and they have their own likes and dislikes, which are contrary to mine. God forbid. And then we think that the solution is to go on to another relationship. Far more common in the West than you find in India, where we still have arranged marriages so frequently. Going on.
Naham dhyavadhi hevyam stri swabhava vidam yanma sarvatmana saktam tyaktvad bhritya manuvrata. Alas, I did not surely I did not know surely till today the nature of women in this manner. Although abandoning me attached to her wholeheartedly, she has been devoted to her servant.
So again, he sees his own ignorance and delusion. He thought that she was being devoted to him. She put on a good act, when in fact it was somebody else, the bad boy, that she really was attached to. He feels the word in Old English is cuckold. He's been cuckolded. His wife has made a cuckold out of him. You used to see old paintings of the fellow having to wear antlers, like deer antlers, on his head, because his wife had cheated on him. He was made a fool. Going on.
Anya saktha ghurabhava bhai chadbhan nurarani pradarshyanti bhakti swam nativa vitamandale. She has been attached to another, having secret conduct and disguised affection towards me, showing her devotion like a courtesan among a group of sensual persons.
So he realizes she's been acting. She's only been pretending to care for him when she really was attached to another. Going on.
Navidam leshatopyenam madirama tamanasaha chayeva mam sangateti matva vishrambha manasaha. I did not understand her even a little with my mind intoxicated by spirituous liquor. Thinking that she was attracted to me like a shadow, I had a trustful mind.
So, in his intoxication, of course, this will become a metaphor in the story of our own intoxication with the objects of the senses, where we think something is other than it really is. He thinks she's devoted to him when she is not. Going on.
Aprekshinam chetisam vanchit irasangatah nunam matto mudhatam ko bhavejar jagati tale ya evam visrab purvam manaya chiravanchitaha. Aided by her, I have for a long time united with that maid who is ugly to look at. Who indeed can be more foolish in this world than me, who have thus been deceived for a long time by her, my wife, with confidence?
So, in his foolishness and his innocence, not only did he not know that his wife was attached to the bad boy, but there he was thinking he was making love to this beautiful woman when it was the servant who, in his sobriety, he is not attracted to. He thinks she's very ugly. We don't know what she looked like, but he thinks she's ugly. But, so he has this double delusion going on. Next one.
Aho yam bhritya hataka sarvanga vikrita kritihi kimas kimasmin nayanadrishtam saundaryam sarvatodhikam yato mam nija saundarya hrita loka valokanam anuraktam sarvathaiva tyakta venam upasangata. Alas, this wretched servant has a loathsome appearance in the whole body. What beauty, which is greater all around, has been perceived in him by her, on account of which she has united with him, abandoning me, who am exceedingly fond of her, and who have attracted the sight of the people by my own beauty.
So he thinks he's beautiful and she doesn't like him. She likes the bad boy servant. And here he is enjoying this servant woman whom, on his sobriety, is not attractive to him at all, thinking it was his wife. And he says, "Why shouldn't she like me? I'm gorgeous." So he's a little bit full of himself. Going on.
Evam pralapya bahudha nirvino tittaram tada Rajaputro vanam pragat sarvasanga vivarjitah. Having lamented thus in many ways and exceedingly disgusted with everything, the prince then proceeded to the forest without any attachment.
So, what has he discovered? He is seeing the how all his investment into this relationship was for naught, and there's just sorrow in it. So his response is to leave the palace and go to the forest, to renounce this worldly pleasure. Let's see what happens. Going on.
Tasmad rajakumare tat saundaryam manasotsthitam yathatvam mai chatyanta saubhagyena purvakam pratim vindasya tiratam तथा वा तद्विशेषतः विदन्ति प्रतिमन्यन्तं योषित योषित्सु विकृतास्वपि अत्रे प्रयत्यं वक्ष्ये शृणु प्रिय समाहितः. Prince, therefore this beauty has arisen because of the mind. As you exceedingly obtain enjoyment preceded by seeing very great beauty in me, in that manner, or better than that, people get very great delight even in deformed women. In this matter, I shall tell you the knowledge which can bring conviction. Dear, hear with concentration.
So now we're back to our framing story of Hemaleka and Hemachuda. And what Hemaleka says is the moral of the story is that pleasure, beauty, the source of happiness is in the mind. It is not out there. So in fact, what do? We decide what it is that's pleasurable. We determine that that object of desire is far away. Then we decide I've got to struggle and work to get it. And then when desire and object of desire become one, for a moment the mind ceases its desiring, its craving, its vancha. And I think I'm so damn smart. When I'm the one who created the relationship that induced the suffering. I did it with my own imagination. And if you think about it, the question we ask is, what is it that has happiness or pleasure as its dharma? Remember our definition of dharma, the essence or the nature of the thing without which it would not be the thing that it is. For example, the dharma of water is to be wet. Everybody experiences wetness in water. The dharma of fire is to burn. Everybody experiences burning and fire. It's the dharma of sugar to be sweet. Everybody has the same experience. But we do not experience happiness with the same objects. They differ from person to person. So we cannot say this particular person, place, thing, or experience inherently has happiness as its dharma. But who experiences happiness when you get what you want? Everybody's hand goes up, at least temporarily. So something mental happens when I get what I want. When desire and object of desire become one, for a moment, the craving, the longing, the thirsting ceases. What a yogi learns to do is, can I have the mind come home without needing the medium of some object to get me there? The scriptures thunder, yes. Just let go. The mind comes home. And I can prove it to you, because no object causes the pleasure of deep sleep. And yet everybody universally enjoys deep sleep. Why? Because the agitation of the mind is gone. So this is the point she's illustrating. So the pleasure that I think is in the people, places, things, and conditions is really something I made up in my mind and project. Going on, next verse.
I have a quick question, Jim.
Please.
Maybe it gets answered subsequently in the text, but is it a legitimate question to ask why, in the first place, does the mind project it outward?
That's a very good question, and nobody's been able to answer it. You see, that is the result of Maya.
Mm-hmm.
The Lord's Maya creates a world in which beings do not know who they are. They have what we technically call a Varana Shakti, veiling power. As the result of that, there's vikshepa shakti, projecting power. And where I think the world of name and form is separate from me and has joy-giving or misery-producing qualities. No one's ever been able to explain the why of it, just that it is. So the Buddhists and Hindus use the word Maya. Actually, if you look into mystical Christianity, this is the deeper meaning of original sin. Both carry the idea that we're born into a condition where we have illusion, delusion. Now, the good news is as individuals, we can wake up. But the Lord keeps spinning his Maya. That's probably not a satisfactory answer, but it's the best anyone's ever been able to do.
All right.
Did you at least get the gist of it?
Yes, very much. I mean, I suspected as much, but yeah, I thought it's worth asking.
No, it's a good question. And we all ask it. All right, any other questions before we go on? Next one.
Vilokyate yahi yoshita sa bahi suvyavastita ya cha tat pratibimbatma rupini chitta sanshraya sankalpa rupini tasya saushtavam manaso likhan pauna punyena tadanu vancham upasamagataha shubdhondriyo narastasyam प्रतिमाप्नोति सर्वतः अशुद्धे त्विदन्त्रिये न स्यात् सुन्दर्यमपि वैरतिः. That woman who is looked at is indeed settled outside the viewer. The one having a form which is of the nature of her reflection, dwelling in the mind, has the characteristic of imagination. Repeatedly painting her beauty by the mind, falling or feeling desire afterwards, the man with an agitated sense organ obtains enjoyment in her all around. When the sense organ is not agitated, there cannot be enjoyment even in a beautiful woman.
So here he's saying is the idea of desirability is in my mind. And once that I determine that the woman or the man is desirable, then I get an agitated sense organ. And I'm tyrannized by my agitated sense organ until I can possess that person. But in fact, what am I engaging with? An image in my mind. And of course, in our modern day, what's so obvious is you just go on the internet and you see these erotic videos or pictures. And there's nobody there. It's just pixels. It's just pixels. I superimpose an idea of desirability. And then we have kind of like a cutout in our imagination of what's desirable. So you're going through the various images on the internet, too tall, too short, too blonde, too dark, till you find the right one. Well, where's the idea of desirability? in my mind. I made it up. Where did it come from? Impressions from the past. Impressions from the past. That's all there is to it. It's very mechanical in a sense. And of course, here, because this is an R-rated text, they're being very graphic about an excited sense organ. But it's desirability about anything. It's desirability about food. It's desirability about validation. It's desirability about getting a damn car or a raise at work or your political party winning or something like that. Whatever it is, I decide in my mind based on the force of the past. And when desire, object of desire become one. I think we may have gone through the whole process. So I initially determined that the object of desire is dear, is pia, person, place, thing, or condition. Then I set about the very serious business of acquiring that object. And when I get proximate to that object, it's called moda. And when desire and object of desire become one, oh yeah, pramoda, the point of pleasure. And that point of pleasure always does the same thing to my mind. It stops the craving. It stops the vikshepa shakti. So we are fooled by the diverse sensory experience. So the fool dances with the object, and when desire and object of desire become one, they go, oh man, that was a great widget, or whatever it is. The yogi starts to own their bliss. When desire and object of desire become one. Oh, that really stopped my mind. Krishna, Krishna. Now, you've got to be very subtle and very attentive, watching. What does it feel like to want something you don't have? Yoga says there's no other suffering. There's physical pain, we'll put that on the shelf. But that's not why people are driven. And the more you want it, and the further away you feel you are from it, the more painful it is. So you watch your suffering, watch your wanting, this vancha, this kama. Watch what happens when you get what you want. Start to pay attention to what it does to your mind. And it really has nothing to do with the object. You've just used the object to momentarily induce the state free from craving. Now, at some point in your meditation, you will see that the pleasure, the blissfulness, the peace that you get in meditation is not caused by an object. And you'll begin to get the direct experience. Oh, it's myself. So we have to have a practice so that you get the immediate experience of the bliss of your self-nature. So you are no longer dependent on the mediated experiences that happen through the objects of the senses. There's no way you're going to let go of the world unless you have a practice. Now, in the end, the bliss of samadhi is a mind state. We let go of our attachment to that too. But you can't renounce something you haven't got. And the value of the bliss of samadhi is that it pulls the mind out of the world. So keep on keeping on. All right, so this is the frame that Hemaleka is driving at here. Let's go on with our story.
Tatra moolam samulekha saushtavasya punah punaha ata shobho naiva drishto balanam yoginamapi. The root or source of that desire is repeated painting of the beauty in the mental canvas through imagination. Therefore, agitation is not at all observed in children and also yogins.
So, for example, the source of the desire in sexual attraction is because of the repeated painting in the mind, the memory, the chintya is the technical term. Chintya in Hindi, I think, means worry. The way we use it in the scriptures in Sanskrit, it's after the fact rumination over an experience, either positive or negative, that impels me to want to repeat it. It's the cause of the sowing of a vasana. And frequently, when you watch little children, they'll be deeply engrossed in playing with a cardboard box. Then something else will distract them, and away they go. And the cardboard box is gone. It leaves no impression on a child's mind. As they develop a sense of what we would call self with a small s, through all those ego building associations, then they start to get their likes and their dislikes. Any thoughts on this? All right, going on.
Sorry, Jim, I have a question. This is sound.
Yes.
If Chintya's rumination of some experience, isn't there also merit in reflecting on the experience to gain, like either to collect feedback or maybe improve upon that experience in the future?
No, it's when I assign joy-giving or misery-producing qualities to it. So, for example, if you give a presentation at work, and you ask your co-workers to give you feedback on the presentation, and you come at it from a purely technological kind of thing, did I speak loud enough? Was my diction good enough? Was my presentation organized?
Yeah.
There's no problem with that. But if, on the other hand, you give the presentation and afterward, everybody comes up and says, "Oh, Soundarya, that was so great." And you walk away in your mind and went, "Yes, I was so good. Yes, I'm the best." You see? Or they say, "Oh, Soundarya, the boss fell asleep in the middle of it, and you leave, you go, oh, I'm going to lose my job. I'm terrible at this work. Can you see the difference?
Yeah.
One of the things I like to compare is if a painter is at the beach and they're painting a seascape, and they look at the ocean and they see the sky, and they look at their painting and say, needs a little bit more white here on the cloud. That's very different than they look at the ocean and the sky and they look at their painting, and they take out a knife and slash the painting. You're a terrible painting. And that kind of response happens with the chintya.
Okay. Yes, very clear. Thank you.
Yes. Very good question. Very good question. All right, going on, please.
तथा च यो यो यस्यां तु रति विन्दति मानवः सुन्दर्यां वापि चान्यस्यां तत्र सौष्ठव वमुल्लिखेत. So also, whichever man obtains enjoyment in whichever woman, beautiful or otherwise, there he should paint in his mind or imagine her beauty.
Yes, so if in another culture, for example, a couple gets together and their physiognomy is such that we would not consider them particularly attractive, they don't care. They're enjoying each other. And as they enjoy it, they superimpose desirability and therefore beauty on the other. So you look at the various ethnicities around the world. People come in all shapes and sizes. Why are you attracted to what you're attracted to? It's all conditioning. That's all it is. All. Going on.
Drishyante yoshito antya bibhat sakara vigraha tarunai sangatascha drishyante pati hetutaha. Women having bodies with extremely disgusting appearances are seen. They are also seen to have united with young men by reasons of the existence of children.
So ugly women get married and have babies too. So somebody finds them desirable. It's all beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And of course, there's many other things that cause us to be attracted. Some people, it has nothing to do with how a person may look compared to some stereotype. But are they kind? Are they a good provider? Etc. Going on.
Virupa tolakhenam va api nullekhastu saushthavai yadi syatat katham nrinam pranitastu hi sambhavet. If there would be either the conception of ugliness or the absence of the conception of beauty, even when it is there, then how indeed can there be enjoyment in them for men?
So, if there's an inherent quality of ugliness or beauty, we wouldn't find the diversity. Of course, the one that I always say is some woman that I might find unattractive. Children always love their mothers. Young children especially find their mothers' bodies a great source of comfort and joy. Mummy. She may be fat, she may be saggy, she may be really skinny, but she's mummy. It's all in our minds. It's all in our minds. And of course, we need to expand this in this particular scripture because it's titillating. We're using sexual attraction, but it's for everything in life. Everything. What's the old Western maxim? Nothing is either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. Going on.
Kim tavyam ahonrinam kaminam shiptachetasam jaghanyangepi saundaryam bhasate sarvatodikam. Alas, what should we say? For lustful men whose minds are distracted, beauty appears even in the worst part of the body more than everything.
So there are parts of the body that are only tolerable as long as you make sure you keep them cleaned and all that kind of stuff. And frequently it's the part of the body that we zero in on. You Indians may not know this maxim. This is attributed to the great Benjamin Franklin, who said every woman is essentially the same between the navel and the knees. So he kind of would focus in on that one part of the human body. And that's where we get the pleasure, you see. Going on.
Mula mutra pariklinam yadangam tatra saubhagam pashyet cheta kutrano pashyet saundaryam tan miraya. If one should see beauty in that part which is wet with impure excretions, where would he not see beauty? Tell me.
So I think that's completely self-explanatory. I don't need to go into the graphic nature of his anatomical description. Next one.
Tasmat saundarya metadvai rajaputra nishamaya abhimana mritenaiva sukha hetur bhavet kvachit. Prince, therefore hear this. Without conception, this beauty cannot at all become the cause of happiness anywhere.
So her conclusion is, it is my idea superimposed on a person that becomes the source of pleasure. That's all it is. There's no inherent pleasure in the world of name and form. The world of name and form isn't bad. It's just empty. Shunyata. It's void. I attribute to it joy-giving and misery-producing qualities. Next one.
Shaudra madhur vadadehi saundaryam sahajam yadi tadbalanam kumaranam kuto no bhati tadvada. If beauty is natural to the body like the sweetness of honey, then why does it not appear to young boys?
Read that again. There was something about with honey. Your voice kind of cut out a little bit.
If beauty is natural to the body like the sweetness of honey, then why does it not appear to young boys?
Yes. So it's only post-adolescent boys whose tongues are falling out of their mouths when they see a beautiful woman. To a prepubescent child, it doesn't move them. If it were inherently desirable, why doesn't it affect children in the same way? And it doesn't. Going on.
देशभेदेषु दृश्यन्ते विविधाकृतयो नराः एकपादैकनयना लम्बकर्णा हयानया कर्णप्रावरणाफाल वक्त्रा निर्गत द्रष्टकाः विनसा दीर्घनासाश्च लोमच्छन्ना विलोकमाः पिङ्गकेशा श्वेतकेशा विकेशा स्थूलकेशकाः विश्वत्रवर्णा काकवर्णा पिङ्गला लोहिताङ्गकाः. Men of various bodily forms are seen in different countries. Those with one leg or one eye, or long ears, or horse-like face, persons with enclosed ears, those with plow-like mouths, or with large teeth projecting out, noseless ones or long-nosed ones, those covered with hair or hairless ones, people with reddish-brown hair or white hair, hairless ones, and those with thick hair, those having the color of people affected by white leprosy or black like crows, people who are yellowish in complexion, and those whose bodies are red.
So here she's talking about how we have this incredible diversity of the human form. And to each in that particular ethnicity, beauty is found. Whereas for others, they may not find someone like that attractive. What I may consider unattractive, other people may think is just as hot as it can be. I think in our modern times, closest thing I can come to this is fashion and hairstyles. I can remember when I was a youngster in my late teens and early 20s, of course, the Beatles were the greatest thing. And I grew my hair long. I thought my father was going to have a fit. Dirty hippie. Tattoos. How many parents have gone ballistic because of kids who get tattoos? Or piercings. Oh God, have I heard parents go, just wring their hands. I don't know if they do this in India, but in this country, kids getting all sorts of parts of their body pierced. And their peers say, oh, that's so hot. Their parents go, oh. All just stuff we make up, conditioned by our environment, superimposed. That's all it is. That's all it is. Oh, here's one, facial hair. 20 years ago in America, young men all were clean shaven. Now, wherever you look, on the news and magazines that are selling clothes, stuff like that, all the young men have facial hair. What changed? Just fashion. What we think is attractive. We just make it up. Going on, next one.
Drishyante yoshito. Oh, sorry, I think I wrote the wrong one. Evam bahuvidhamartya sajateva nitasute ratim vindati tvamiva rajaputra nishamaya. Prince, thus those men of numerous kinds obtain enjoyment in women of the same kind, like you. Observe this.
So, no matter what the different physiognomy all over the world, they still have just as much enjoyment as you and I may have in our spouses. Going on.
Dukha sadhana bhuteshu mukhyam yat strivapu sthitam sarva priyam yatra sarve muhyanti vibudha api. The body of a woman, which stands foremost among those which have become the means of happiness, is dear to everybody where all people, even wise ones, are infatuated.
So, here again, she's very wisely talking about probably the strongest impulse that we have to find pleasure is our sex drive. And she says, for a man, it's the body of a woman. And, in our modern world, we have to be equanimous, equal minded about it. So for women, it's men. So they are just as capable of being lusty and enjoying as men. But the imperious tyrant of sexual attraction is pretty common to us all. Going on.
Punsam vapustatha shrinam priyamatyanta sundaram vimarshaya subudhaya tvam rajaputra yathastitam. So also, the body of men appears pleasing and extremely beautiful to women. Prince, you investigate the matter as it stands with your excellent intellect.
So here she's followed right on what I was saying. Next verse.
Mansa lipta masikrinam shirabadham tvagatatam asthita pancha jarakam lomachannam pita pittakafahitam mulamutra kusululam tuj shrut shukra shonita sambhavan mutrad vara samudbhuta maho priyam iheshyate. Alas, that which is covered with flesh, wet with blood, bound by blood vessels and nerves, spread over by skin, a cage of bones, covered by hair, containing bile and phlegm, a storehouse for feces and urine, which arises from semen and blood, and born from near the opening for the ejection of urine, is regarded here as agreeable.
Yes. So here she's echoing what Shankara talks about when he talks about the gross body and ways in which we can begin to see it for what it is. It's really only tolerable with an enormous amount of care. Just go for a week without bathing it or wiping it and see how pleasant the body is. It really is tolerable only with an enormous amount of attention. Or you see some woman and she's got beautiful breasts. Oh, her breasts are so beautiful. Well, would you like to flay them and maybe fondle the lymph glands inside in the milk ducts? Ew. Or for a gal, oh, you should see he had a six-pack, flat tummy, and you could the muscles. Oh, well, you could flay them open and fondle his intestines, perhaps. So this idea of dissecting the body, seeing it for what it really is, we begin to see that the attraction we have, yes, it's instinctual. It's instinctual. But our ideas of desirability and beauty are to a large degree just images in the mind. Puneet, how many more verses in this chapter? I forget.
We have about 20 more.
Okay, I think now is a good place to stop then. Which one are we going to do next week?
87.
87?
Chapter 487.
Okay. And we have time now for questions. Before we do, let me again reiterate the assignment I want you to take up, which is to meditate on what I call the pleasure principle. I have very recently been told that psychologists have a different definition of this term. But what I mean by it is this. Yoga says there is no other suffering than wanting something I don't have, or the flip side, aversion, wanting to be rid of something I don't like, or what I call the neurotic form. I have what I want, but I'm afraid I'm going to lose it, so I can't enjoy it. Don't believe me. Watch your suffering. Make friends with it. When you're agitated, when you're upset, what's going on? What do you want? Or what do you want to get rid of? And see that the very mental act of wanting is what hurts. Then also pay attention to satisfaction of desire. Not telling you to change anything. Just be woke, AF, as the young people say. Pay attention. Yoga says pleasure tastes the same to the mind. What it does to the mind is the same. It varies in intensity. It varies in duration, depending on how badly I wanted the object and how completely it satisfied my picture. And make friends with that ananda. That's myself. See the similarity. Don't get fooled by the diversity of sense experience. And then as you meditate and your mind gets calmer and more peaceful, notice, oh, no object is causing this. What I've done is for a while, maybe I get a minute or two in a 30-minute meditation. But for a couple minutes, maybe, my mind is in fact freed from craving. It feels good. So we begin to own our bliss rather than compulsively projecting it into the world. Start to pay attention to this idea. There's nothing inherently good about what I want. I decided that that particular thing is pleasurable. I go to the San Francisco Symphony and I listen to a Mozart symphony. Someone who's into Indian classical music, they don't enjoy it at all. It's not inherently pleasurable. It's only that I like it. Why do I like it? Nothing more than the force of the past. It's incredibly mechanical. Now, just paying attention to this will cause things to start to shift. Any questions about the underlying theory and the practice that's I've given you?
Jim, not as much as a question, but as a comment. You mentioned, for example, making friends with your satisfaction of desire, also making friends with the feeling of pleasure or ananda. I think that one of the things which one needs to undo is the sort of social conditioning of the mind before one can reach that. And I don't know if I'm making sense.
Give me a specific example.
For example, a very simple example, let's say drinking, let's say alcohol is something which in certain societies, let's say very traditional Indian societies, would be considered taboo. And even though it gives you pleasure, let's say for a while, you would first need to undo the social construct before you can meet this alcohol and its pleasure on its own terms. Because,
Excellent. You're
yeah,
absolutely right. Because you've got like a guilt spiral. Oh, I'm not
yes,
supposed to drink, it's sinful. You can't even really, and then if you're a naughty boy, like the one our princess was into, I'm going to drink alcohol because they told me I couldn't. See, then you're still not even experiencing it. You're absolutely right. So you've got to get rid of a lot of that stuff. So the yogi is not an immoral person. They are an amoral person. They look at their behavior without the superimposition of societal mores. You can't really see what's really there without it. You're absolutely. Did I catch your point?
absolutely.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right.
Thanks.
Did you all grasp what he was driving at? That's why being a goody-goody as a yogi is a dead end. It's a dead end. Authenticity is far more important. Now, back to your experience of drinking. So you've got society says drinking is bad. But then if you decide, okay, I'm just going to see what happens. Okay, I'm going to have a scotch and water. Oh, this is really kind of nice. I think I'll have another. I think I'll have a third. And then you wake up in the next morning and someone tells you, oh, you were so funny. You took your pants off when you were dancing on the table last night. I did. Then all of a sudden you see, well, there's more than just the immediate pleasure of the drink, the scotch and water, you know. So you also have to, or the person who drinks champagne Friday night, wakes up the next day with an upset stomach and a headache and says, oh, I think I have the flu. Or thinks the solution is a Bloody Mary. Not seeing the relationship between Friday night's indulgence and Saturday morning's headache. Let's see. There's all that stuff too, but that's paying attention, paying attention. Any other questions?